Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Now the Republic had a lot of tools at its disposal that it used to beat back the separatist droid hordes. From starships such as the Venator-class Star Destroyer to the imposing ATTE, the Republic had the big guns it needed for victory. But for the men on the ground, nothing was more important than the blaster in his hands. Now, the clone troopers were the backbone of the Grand Army of the Republic, and they would serve as the main line of defense against the separatist droid army. Born on the cloning world of Kamino and devoted to a life of battle, the clones would train with a handful of different blasters. Often, the clones would be dropped into conflict with nothing but the armor on their backs and a weapon in their hands. They used a wide range of blasters, from the standard issue DC-15A blaster rifle to the versatile DC-17M interchangeable weapons system. The most important attribute of all of these blasters was their ability to turn droids into scrap metal. The DC-15A blaster rifle was the standard issue weapon given to the rank-and-file clone troopers. Developed by Blast Tech Industries, a mainstay in the military-industrial complex of both the Republic and the Empire, the DC-15A was a long rifle design meant for medium to long-range engagements. It used Tabana gas cartridges for ammunition and had a maximum of 300 shots at high power and 500 shots at low power per cartridge. The first drawback of the weapon was that it was quite heavy, weighing at around 4.4 kilograms. It was quite awkward to use and ineffective in close ranges or in cramped spaces. Another problem with this blaster was that it oftentimes overheated with continuous fire. These drawbacks caused many clones to put down the weapon and pick up its smaller cousin, the DC-15S blaster carbine. However, it did outdo its smaller cousin when it comes to utility, as it could be equipped with ascension cables, scopes, and grenade launchers, and also packed quite the punch as it burned through B-1 battle droids with ease. The blaster was expensive and cost around 2,200 Republic credits, which was a lot more than the E5s being used by their droid foes. Other than the clones, the Republic Senate Guard would also use these weapons in combat. Of course, that doesn't mean much because the Senate Guard had the combat capability of a porg fighting its way out of a wet paper bag. The weapon would continue to see combat beyond the Clone Wars. It was adopted and modified by the Purge Troopers of the Empire into the DC-15LE for long-range engagements to take down Jedi scum. The clones found out pretty quickly that war was quite different from the simulations that they had trained on in Kamino, and quickly they started looking for more mobile platforms that they could use. Used alongside the DC-15A was the DC-15S. The smaller carbine became more popular with the clones as the war dragged on. It was perfect for close-quarter combat such as on board a starship or creeping through a Geonosian hive. The smaller size, lightweight, and higher rate of fire was alluring to the clones as their real war experience grew. The weapon came with a folding stock and it had less problems with overheating. Due to its lightweight, the DT-15S could be dual-wielded or used with a shield in the offhand for extra protection. It had 500 shots in one cartridge and came with a stun feature to stop a person from fleeing justice. Cheaper than its larger cousin, the 15S was only around 1,000 credits, which means that you could buy two of the smaller carbines for one of the larger DC-15As. It's a good deal. Considering how the Republic almost went bankrupt several times, it's not surprising that the DC-15S became much more popular. The DC-15S was also given to civilians and resistance fighters during the course of the war, such as on Christophsis, where civilians were attempting to ward off a separatist invasion. These, however, were powered-down versions and were not as effective in the hands of the planetary militias and freedom fighters. The 15S was utilized as the main blaster for the newly founded Galactic Empire and served as the predecessor to the E-11. Now, the reason why the carbine became the preferred weapon was that the large battlefields of the Clone Wars became more and more rare occurrences when the Empire took over. So we've talked about the more standard blasters that are oftentimes issued to civilians or clone troopers. Now let's look at some more specialized weapons. The DC-17 hand blaster was also called the Commando Pistol. It was not widely circulated to the clones as the DC-15A and S. It was a heavy blaster pistol issued to elite clones such as high-ranking officers, ARC troopers, clone commandos, and jet troopers. The weapon was even smaller and lighter than the 15S, and it had the same stopping power as the DC-15A. Every group that utilized the DC-17 hand blaster had different reasons for carrying it into their respective operations. Officers liked it because it was compact and easy to carry, whereas ARC troopers and commandos enjoyed its close-quarter battle capabilities and stopping power, and jet troopers just wanted something as light as possible for when they're flying around. The DC-17 packed a hard punch despite its small size because it had the same internal components as its cousin, the DC-17M. It also had less recoil and a higher firing rate than even the DC-15S. A special variant would be used by ARC Captain Fordo at the Battle of Munilist and Hypori. The variant had a suppressor attachment secured onto the muzzle for use in infiltration and other stealth operations. The hand blaster had an ammo capacity of 50 shots and came with a stun feature, which Commander Wolf used to incapacitate the Jedi fugitive Ahsoka Tano. The young Jedi was lucky that it wasn't Commander Fox who was brandishing the weapon. The lethal shots from the DC-17 were hyper-ionized to be more effective in wiping out an opposing droid. Its one drawback was it was only effective at very close ranges from around 20 to 30 meters. The DC-17 was not available for non-military personnel and cost around 1,000 credits per unit. 7 years after the rise of the Empire, a clone rebellion would spark on Kamino, and the DC-17 would be issued to jet troopers when the Empire came to put an end to the clone insurrection. ARC troopers are awesome, and that's why most of our most memorable and favorite clones are generally ARC troopers. However, the ARC troopers can be compared to the Army Rangers, and the clone commandos are the Delta Force of the Republic. Clone commandos were the most elite troops deployed by the GAR. Different from all of their brothers, they usually did not see open, large-scale battles, and were utilized as special forces, dropped behind enemy lines for sabotage operations. The commandos were issued a weapon that had a lot of different uses. The DC-17M interchangeable weapon system was one of the most sophisticated weapons seen during the Clone Wars. It had 3 different firing modes available to the user. There was the standard rifle blaster, the anti-armor grenade launcher, and a high-powered sniper rifle setting. The standard blaster was an automatic and fired ion pulses with 60-round power packs. The grenade launcher was really useful against heavy armor or vehicles that couldn't really be stopped by just the standard blaster. The explosive had a 4-meter blaster radius, which was excellent at destroying lighter nearby droids. The final configuration was the sniper rifle, and it had an effective range of 450 meters. The electromagnetic targeting scope could zoom from 10 to 20 times, and it also featured a 5-round magazine, which was very, very high-powered rounds. The weapon was quite heavy, weighing in at about 5 kilograms. But that one small negative does not impact the overall effectiveness of this weapon. The DC-17M was not obtainable by civilians and was produced only for the clone commandos, at around 4,500 credits per unit. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, Hondo Ohnaka's pirate gang did manage to get their hands on some of these DC-17Ms. The DC-17M would also be used by the Empire during its transition period when the clone commandos became Imperial commandos. Subtlety and finesse are really optional battlefield qualities, especially when you have a target-rich environment that needs maintenance like a poorly trimmed lawn. When your enemy is so kind as to walk slowly towards your position in tightly packed formations, the Z6 rotary blaster cannon is a clone's best friend. Also developed by Blastech, this weapon system would be used for decades. However, it was most famous while in the hands of clone troopers shouting "For the Republic." The weapon had a very high rate of fire, which was perfect at suppressing an entire area. But the weapon did have some drawbacks. The Z6 earned a heavy weapons classification as it weighed up to 16 kilograms. It was unwieldy and cumbersome, and a clone required specialized training to be able to use it effectively. The Z6 ate through ammo as quickly as a Hutt could eat through an all-you-can-eat baby alien buffet. Which is not a buffet for baby aliens, but a buffet of baby aliens because it's Hutt space. There's like no regulation, so you can pretty much do whatever you want there. The cannons had a power cartridge of 200 full power shots and the ability to fire at 165 shots per second. This meant you could fire the Z6 for a full second before needing to reload. To circumvent this problem, sometimes clones would carry backpack generators to allow it to fire for longer sustained periods. Another major drawback with the Z6 was that the optimal firing position when handheld was usually from the hip. The stance made you an obvious and priority target for the enemy to fire upon. Now, the cost of a rotary blaster cannon ranged from around 3,500 credits to 5,500 credits per unit. The weapon would have a long life and see many battlefields and conflicts. The Empire would continue to make use of the Z6, and so would the Rebellion, including Ram Kota's militia during the Galactic Civil War. So those are the main weapons utilized by the GAR during the Clone Wars. Let me know in the comment section below which one is your favorite. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.